He spent his life opening locked doors, finding treasure where nobody else looked, taking gambles that nobody else would take. And now, the final door has closed. Darrell Sheets, the gambler, gone. But before he left, he had one last thing to say, and it will stay with you forever. There are people who become famous, and then there are people who become beloved. Darrell Sheets was the second kind. He did not walk onto storage wars with a publicist and a carefully managed image. He walked on as himself, loud, passionate, impulsive, generous, occasionally reckless, always real. The kind of person who fills a room without trying, who makes everyone around him either laugh or argue, or both at the same time. He called himself the Gambler, and everything about that name was accurate. In the world of storage unit auctions, where you bid on locked units you can barely see inside, every single decision is a gamble. You are betting your money on your instincts, on years of experience, on a gut feeling that something valuable is hiding in the darkness behind that padlocked door. Darrell Sheets had better instincts than almost anyone in that world. He had been doing it long before storage wars existed, long before any television camera pointed at him. He built a life around a skill that most people did not even know existed, and he was genuinely, demonstrably excellent at it. When A&E gave the world storage wars in 2010, they gave the world Darrell Sheets, and the world responded immediately, because you cannot fake what Darrell had. That combination of expertise and humor and warmth and complete unapologetic authenticity, he, VTT, was not performing being Darrell Sheets. He was Darrell Sheets. Every single episode, every single season, every single bid. And that, in a television landscape full of performed authenticity, was something genuinely rare and genuinely precious. 14 seasons, hundreds of episodes, years of storage units, auction paddles, and the particular electricity of a bid that could go either way. Darrell Sheets was present for a remarkable portion of that journey, and his presence shaped the show in ways that are easy to overlook now that he is gone. He brought competition, real competition, not the manufactured drama of scripted conflict, but the genuine, professional competitiveness of a man who wanted to win because winning mattered to him, because his livelihood depended on it, because the gamble was real. He brought humor, the kind that comes from a person who is genuinely funny rather than someone performing funny. His reactions to bad units, the theatrical despair, the pointed commentary on whatever junk he had just paid money for, were comedy that nobody wrote. It came from the actual moment, from the actual disappointment. And it was hilarious because it was real. He brought Brandon, his son, his partner in the storage wars. Watching Darrell and Brandon navigate units together, the father teaching, the son learning, both of them disagreeing loudly and affectionately, added a family dimension to the EE show that made Darrell more than a television character. It made him a father, a real one, with a real son who was watching and learning and becoming. And he brought the finds, the legendary, talked about, remembered for years, finds that made storage wars something beyond a bidding competition. The artwork unit remains the most extraordinary moment in the show's history. A storage unit containing original artwork, potentially worth millions of dollars, that Darrell Sheets had the instinct and the courage to bid on. The moment of discovery. The slow realization of what was inside. The gambler hitting the jackpot in the most spectacular possible way. That moment is Storage Wars. everything the show promised and delivered, all in one extraordinary unit that Darrell Sheets found because he trusted his gut. He always trusted his gut. The farewell that Darrell Sheets gave the world was not planned as a farewell. That is what makes it so moving. In the months before his death, as his health declined, as the cardiac problems that had plagued him since his 2018 heart attack continued to take their toll, Darrell Sheets remained connected to the people who loved him through social media, through conversations with his son, through the particular grace of a man who understood, perhaps better than most, that time is the most valuable thing any of us have. He spoke about gratitude, about what the storage wars years had meant to him, about the fans, the people who had watched him, written to him, supported him through the health scares, celebrated with him through the big finds. He was genuinely, deeply moved by the loyalty of the people who had followed his journey. He spoke about Brandon, always about Brandon, the son who had worked alongside him, the son who had learned the business, the son who would carry something of his father forward into whatever came next. The pride in those conversations, the unmistakable, enormous father's pride, was present in everything he said about his boy. He spoke about the game, about storage units, about the particular joy of standing in front of a locked door and feeling, in your gut, in your bones, in that place where instinct lives, that something good was behind it. He never stopped loving the game, even when the body was struggling, even when the health challenges were real and serious and undeniable. The gambler still wanted to bid. And the fans who were paying attention, who were reading his words and watching his interviews in those final months, understood that they were watching something important. A man wrapping up, not dramatically, not with self-pity, but with the quiet, clear-eyed generosity of someone who wanted to say thank you before the time ran out. That is the farewell, spread across small moments, expressed in gratitude rather than grand statements, real in the way that only things from real people ever are. Of everyone who has felt the loss of Darrell Sheets, nobody has felt it more completely than Brandon. Brandon Sheets grew up alongside his father in a very specific way, not just in the usual sense, not just the ordinary growing up that children do alongside their parents, but in the particular, unusual, deeply bonding way of working together, of learning a trade, of standing in front of storage units, and being taught, by example, by instruction, by the 1,000 small daily lessons that fathers give sons when they work side by side. Brandon learned how to look at a unit from his father, learned how to read the contents, learned when to bid and when to walk away, learned the patience and the courage and the calculated recklessness that the job requires. He also learned, just from watching, what it looks like to love your work, what it looks like to show up every day with genuine enthusiasm for something that most people would dismiss as insignificant, what it looks like to find meaning in the overlooked and the abandoned and the forgotten. Those are not small lessons. Those are life lessons, the kind that shape a person. And now Brandon carries them alone. He has spoken, with the rawness of fresh grief, about his father, about the specific, irreplaceable quality of a person who is both your parent and your partner and your teacher, about the particular silence that follows when someone like that is gone. He has spoken about legacy, about what his father left, not just the storage unit business, not just the television memories, but the way of seeing the world, the instinct, the courage, the willingness to gamble on what you believe in. Brandon Sheets carries all of that now. And in carrying it, he honors the gambler in the most complete way possible. The Storage Wars community, the cast, the crew, the producers, the people who built 14 seasons of television alongside Darrell Sheets, responded to his death with genuine grief. Dave Hester, the man whose rivalry with Darrell generated some of the most entertaining television in the show's history, paid tribute with words that cut through the drama of the on-screen relationship and acknowledged something simpler and, more important, that Darrell Sheets was a real person, a colleague, someone whose presence in the Storage Wars world was irreplaceable. The rivalry was television. The respect was real. Brandy Pasante and other cast members shared memories of Darrell on set, of Darrell between takes, of the Darrell that the cameras caught and the Darrell that the cameras missed. The consistent picture that emerged was of someone whose personality was exactly what it appeared to be. No gap between the on-screen Darrell and the off-screen one. What you saw was what you got. Always. The producers of Storage Wars, the people who had worked with him across years of production, spoke about the particular challenge of making television with someone like Darrell. The challenge not of managing him, but of keeping up with him, of capturing something that moved as fast and as freely as he did. Because Darrell Sheets could not be directed into a moment. The moments happened because he was himself, and the cameras were pointed at him when they did. That is the gift he gave the production, and it is the gift that lives in every episode that will ever be rerun. So what is the final legacy of Darrell Sheets? It is not the artwork unit, though that unit was extraordinary and will be talked about for as long as Storage Wars is remembered. It is not the 14 seasons, though those seasons represent an extraordinary body of work for a man who never set out to be a television personality. It is not the rivalry with Dave Hester, though that rivalry gave the show some of its most entertaining moments. The final legacy of Darrell Sheets is simpler and more important than any of those things. It is the example of a man who found something he loved, something specific, something unglamorous, something that most people would walk past without a second thought, and built an entire life around it. Who showed up for that thing every single day with genuine passion and genuine skill and genuine joy. It is the example of a father who brought his son into his world, who shared his knowledge and his instincts and his love for the game with the person who mattered most, who made work something that connected rather than separated. It is the example of a person who, when the cameras found him, did not try to become something different, who remained completely himself, in success and in struggle, in the big finds and the bad units, in the health scares and the recoveries. And it is the example of a man who, when he understood that time was running short, chose gratitude, who spent his final months saying thank you to the people who had loved him, who left the world the way he had always worked, on his own terms, in his own way, with his instincts intact. The gambler played a good hand, a real one. Darrell Sheets opened locked doors for a living. He stood in front of the unknown, unit after unit, auction after auction, and chose to believe that something good was inside, even when he could not see it, even when the odds were against him, even when every sensible person would have walked away. He chose to believe. And he was right often enough to keep choosing. That is not just a storage unit philosophy. That is a life philosophy. That is the gambler's wisdom. That the locked door is worth bidding on. That the unknown is worth facing. That the gamble, taken with courage and instinct and genuine love for the game, is worth every risk. Darrell Sheets bid on life with everything he had. He won more than he lost. He loved more than he struggled. He gave more than he took. And when the final unit was opened, when the last door swung wide, what was inside was a legacy that nobody could have predicted, and everyone who loved him can feel. Gratitude, family, authenticity, joy. The gambler's treasure. Rest easy, Darrell. You played the game beautifully.